I've always been the one that was the tallest, the skinniest, and the darkest. As I walked down the Fashion Week ramp, those lights at the end, I was captured. I remember blacking out. I didn't even have more than one drink.
Good evening and welcome to Visionaries Lounge. You may have heard the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But what happens when the beholder's standard of beauty is not quite what you see in the mirror? How do you rise above those feelings of inadequacy and maybe not measuring up to become a serious force to be reckoned with in the fashion and beauty industry? I think the best person to answer that question is my guest for this evening, supermodel Lerato Moloi. A very good evening to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Ayanda.
Ramecha today, can you see our pastels?
Coordination on feet.
Except you are beautifully tall. You have this lovely stature. Were you always tall or did you have a sudden growth spurt?
I've always been the one that was the tallest, the skinniest, and the darkest. So being tall has always been part of my life. I didn't have a growth spurt. Yeah, that's just been me. Tamteleli.
Other than that, tell me a bit more about your childhood, where you were born and raised.
I was born in Johannesburg, in Kensington, and grew up in the Vaal. My parents lived predominantly in the Vaal. My dad was from Sophiatown and my mom from Sharpeville. So my childhood was basically around Sebokeng, Sharpeville, Residencia. That is where I spent my formative years. And in high school, I was sent to boarding school in Limpopo.
You have a sister as well, if I'm not
mistaken.
mistaken.
Yes, I have a younger sister, Tabi Singh, and two older sisters as well, but half sisters.
Were you comfortable in the skin that you were in as a child?
I was not very comfortable in the skin I was in, mostly because I got teased a lot, especially, by the mean kids. It's typical of growing up. We all experienced bullying at some point in our lives. I got called a lot of mean names, and I think it also fed into my low self-esteem and my insecurities as a kid.
What was your internal dialogue at that time? Can you remember?
Well, as a preteen, I remember trying to figure myself out and figure what the point of life is. Like, do I really need to wake up every day and go through this, kind of thing, especially growing up in a single parent household. We saw a lot of tough times, but my mother, the strongest woman I know, my role model.
Did you look like your siblings, your sisters?
No, I was the darkest one. My sisters are all yellow bone fella, so so when I was told gorilla mansu king, even not even mansu, pidi
that is so hurtful. Children can be cruel.
Yes, kids are very cruel, and I believed every single word they told me. It got me to a point where, besides being very shy as a child, I didn't interact much with people. I didn't know. If you weren't a close friend by the time I reached my teens, I did not really like meeting new people. Kept to myself. My family knows me as a bit of a clown, but when you meet me initially, you think, I know, but I shy too much.
We my mates. When did you get into the model industry and how?
I have my mother to thank for all of this. She's such an observant woman, and she only wants the best for her children. She's the one who forced me into this, and I say forced because I refused to get into it. Yes, I was like, no, Ma, I don't want to. Because the images I saw in magazines and on TV looked nothing like me. Right?
What did you want to do with the rest of your life?
I was going to become a psychologist. But as things happened, that's not what went down.
Modeling won your heart.
Yeah.
Tell me about that first moment where you just thought, this is it.
I think maybe a few years into it. is when I realized I love what I'm doing. Actually, let me backtrack to my first fashion show, my first year. Julian Smith, he's now retired from fashion. My first ever fashion show, my biggest gig. As I walked down the Fashion Week ramp and those lights at the end of the ramp, I saw those and I was captured. I'd never been on a ramp ever in my life. I was 17 years old, fresh from high school. Backstage was chaos. But as soon as I got onto the ramp, that's when I felt at home and at peace. And I think that's when I fell in love with it.
Yeah. Things are starting to look up slowly but surely. And then we have in the US where you try and break it big there and you're told, sorry, you're just a little bit too big for us.
Right. That was a very peculiar time.
What size were you back
I was 32 at that point, size 32. When I entered Face of Africa, I became a runner-up, which put me through to another competition, international competition, Elite Model Look. And I was one of 80 to 84 contestants worldwide vying for a modeling contract as well. And I made it to the top 15. By the time I got there, I started filling out a little bit, you know. I wasn't that long bean stalk that I was.
32 for me is like
it's still
the
slim.
goal. It's the ideal right now.
I know. According to African standards, if we call it that, I'm still very slim.
Yeah.
Size 32 is slim. When I get there, they measure me and they're like, okay, you're not that size 27 that you were when you got the contract. So I was in breach of contract, basically, for gaining weight. They gave me 2 months to try and lose the weight, but none of the basically pasta, pies, McDonald's. I was going in on the Taco Bell, you know, I was very excited.
And you were in the US.
I know,
and
right?
Losing weight in the US is something that's extremely difficult to do.
Yes.
The portion sizes are big.
Oh yeah.
What did that do to your body image now? Did you start to second guess yourself at all?
Oh no, never. I always felt like, you know what? My body is the one I was born in, and there's not much that I can do to it. You know, I'm not going to force myself to end up looking like those skinny girls. I remember going to a few auditions while I was in New York, and you have to try on an outfit. It barely reached over my knees, you know, like a pair of pants or a skirt. That's how small they are, that size. That's the size you required.
Oh my goodness.
And I decided, okay, I'm just going to stick to what I know. Back home, I work every other day. So I think I'd already been comparing, you know, the struggle between getting a job in New York. I think I ended up only doing 1 or 2 shoots, a fashion show or 2. And that's when I decided for myself, I love my food, I love to eat. And I'm not going to harm myself or my body.
You're not unhealthy.
No.
You're not obese.
Not at all. I'm skinny as it comes when I'm back home. So I'm not going to risk my health at all. I think it's also because I knew the kind of things that happen behind the scenes with models, you know, how desperate they become to get a job. You need to be a certain size, and sometimes they demand you to lose weight within a week, and that is really not going to be done in a healthy way.
Not even someone's bone structure, because sometimes there is no fat left.
You know what
it's just how you build.
That's
okay. But you know, you touch on something that's quite important, and I want to delve a little bit deeper into it. They usually say, if something bothers you enough, it means that you're the one who's actually supposed to deal with it and assist others. So I want to find out what you did with the revelations that you received in the US, and you'll find that out in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. Our visionary this evening is supermodel Lerato Moloi. I just love saying supermodel. She went from a very low self-esteem as a child to conquering the catwalk. Just before the break, we had left off where you were talking to us about your experience in the US and how, although you were thin and you were healthy by South African standards, there you were seen as extremely big. That touched you so much that you decided to do something about it actively. Talk to us about what you did.
Well, when I got back, it took a few conversations with my colleagues, fellow models and my peers, and getting people to to get their viewpoint on what had happened. Why am I being sent back for being too big when in fact I'm actually really skinny? Every time I came across a young woman or girl child that wanted to be in the industry, the first thing they'd ask me is, do you think I need to lose weight in order to be a model like you? Every time I got that opportunity to speak with a girl that asked that kind of question, I make sure they understand they need to love themselves first and understand that this industry is not built for everyone. And yes, if you really are passionate about it, go for it. But at the same time, take care of yourself first.
As a mother of two,
Yes.
especially your oldest daughter, who's 11, how important is that? And making sure that she understands
Yes.
what beauty is and how beautiful she is. We have a number of young children who are battling issues of weight, who are battling issues of even skin color, because this yellow bone phenomenon it's a huge craze that's taken over not only South Africa, but all over the world, skin bleaching, etc. So how important is it as a mother of a daughter for you to send that message across?
Every single time I have a moment with my oldest is when I'm pouring into her how much love she's surrounded by and how beautiful she is as a person. I had to get to a point where she understands it's not about how she looks. Because she's a preteen now, she's going through the motions, puberty. Oh,
Yes.
Lord help me.
Yes.
It's a challenge because a lot of the times we have very interesting conversations where she's asking me about, she has a birthmark on her cheek. Like I have a birthmark on my hand, which gets airbrushed out of most of my shots. But I'm very proud of my birthmark. And she has one on her cheek, an upside down teardrop. So she has issues with that. She's been teased. But I have to remind her, honey, that's your mark. That's your beauty mark. That's what makes you special. And that's what makes you extra unique.
I want to speak about another incident in your life that had the potential to destroy you, I would think.
Yes.
It happened in London. I want to talk about your rape ordeal.
Yes.
Can you talk us through that?
This was right at the beginning of my career. I had landed the contract. It was just before I was going to New York. When I got to London, I actually went to Oxford to visit my mom. And on one trip to work on the tube, I met a gentleman who recognized me from Face of Africa. He'd seen the competition. He was an African man. So he told me, no, I know you. You are that girl who was in Face of Africa. So I felt, what are the chances? I was actually surprised, pleasantly, that someone recognized me from something like that. And it was cool. And I had no friends, so I felt, let me make friends. A few weeks went by, invited me out for drinks at one of the pubs out there in London. And it turned into walking into the venue, sitting down, ordering a drink, and when that drink came, I remember taking one sip, and I remember nothing after that. My drink had been spiked. All I have is flashbacks of this man on top of me, and I just remember blacking out again. When I woke up again, I saw my underwear was around my ankle. My pants had been thrown on the floor, and so I was in some dingy apartment in London. I looked for a phone, and I called this guy, and I asked him, did you rape me? He said, no, you can't say that. This was consensual. You and I agreed to do this. I'm like, but I do not recall. I remember blacking out. I didn't even have more than one drink. And he denied it completely. He was from a very influential family as well, a doctor. So he then proceeded to threaten to get me deported and have my mother deported. So he made it very clear that he'd make my life hell if I reported the incident. And then I came back home and got back into my comfort zone, worked a bit here and there. You know, that was the first rape incident that I encountered in my life. Until maybe a year later, back home. Happened again. Yeah, it's one of those things, I don't want to go through every single one, but I can count.
How does it not consume you? How do you make that decision that this is not going to end me?
You know, to be honest, Ayanda, it did get to that point where I felt, okay, this is my lot in life. I'm supposed to be hurt. Around 2006, 2007, I went into a bit of a depression because I couldn't understand, why is it happening to me so many times? Am I that naive? Am I too trusting? I went through those motions. I had to kind of ask, and I was angry at God for the longest time. I had to figure out, what is it that I'm going to do to change my situation? Because I cannot live like this. Every single situation, I look for that silver lining.
I also want to ask you how you've managed to be so optimistic as a mum as well. I know that you went through a divorce. I'm not sure what the details are, but that you've actually come out of it and with an optimistic spirit to say, I'm a mom, I'm a working mom, I'm doing these things, and it's great.
Yes.
Tell us about that journey.
I think when I got married, it was to kind of prove a point. You know, the signs were there not to get married. This was just after I'd gone through my last traumatic incident. So when I got married, I felt, okay, maybe I'll be safe here. Then I won't encounter any more creeps out there. And unfortunately, with the divorce, it was just after my son was born. And it hit me hard. It really did. I think I also went through a bit of postnatal depression. So it became very difficult for me to be myself, or to be the mom that I felt I could be to my kids. And it took a lot of prayer, a lot of counseling, a lot of support from family and friends for me to get back to my old self, get back to who I really am. Started from scratch, and like I said, that mindset change, that's what changed my life. It's great to plan for the future. It is. You need to do that. But as an individual, I do not stress myself out as much as I used to when it comes to daily tasks, to what people think about me. I actually do not care what people think about me. I'm living my life to the fullest for my children, for myself, for my family.
Oh, I'm reminded of that song, I've been to the bottom, now I'm back on top.
Thank you, honey.
Back on top. And talking about being back on top, I want to find out what you're working on and what the future has in store for you in just a moment. Be sure to stay with us. See you in just a moment. Hello again. It's so great to have you with us. We're joined now by another model, Sono. She is a very good friend of Lerato Moloi's, and I'm beginning to feel left out now. Two models. Can you just make me an honourary one?
Of course,
We'll
honey.
pretend I'm tall because I'm sitting down. Nobody will have to know.
Don't worry,
I'm
you're
like
perfect.
yay high. When it comes to you.
We're the same height right now,
Yeah.
girl. That's
Right
all that
now is
counts.
all that matters.
Don't worry.
Solo,
Yes,
tell us a bit about Lerato. What is she like?
Sure. This woman of
The
mine.
truth, ne?
No, it's the
Yeah,
truth.
that camouflage.
She tells it like it is. She does.
Don't worry. This woman of mine, I call her my woman. She loves good things in life, the best for everybody, for me, for her, for everybody else around her. That's why even now we're still friends. We share ideas and everything. She's very calm.
Tell
Together.
me about how you two first met, because you were new in the agency and she was already a veteran,
Yeah.
right? So she was already out there.
Yes.
But you gravitated towards each other. Did that send a message to you about the type of person that she was? Or she didn't think she's high and mighty?
I think one of the reasons why I clicked with her is because I've met a lot of models before. Some you can see, they just don't have time. I was new in the modeling industry and I didn't know anything. the only advice I could ask, it was from her. And she was calm. She would let me know, no, casting, it's about this, you do that. And that's how I clicked with her, because she never looked down on me.
A lot of people don't expect Tule and I to be friends because, you know, we are...
Yeah, she's taking your meat.
Yeah, type of thing.
Job, you don't get it. So.
Yes. So most of my friends are gorgeous human beings physically and, you know, as persons from the inside. They're beautiful from the inside out. They inspire me. I don't just look at my friends as people that I compete with. They're people that help me grow. You know, we need each other. We need, this is the kind of family you get to choose. Remember you were saying?
Yes, she's the sister you could pick.
This is the sister I chose. One of my sisters that I could choose.
You're still busy.
Yes.
You haven't quite hung up your boots just yet.
Not quite.
You've been working very closely with Tula Cindy.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Oh, Tula Cindy, I love him. I adore him.
He's the brother in this equation.
Yes, he's another family member.
Yes.
You know, I've chosen him. I adore Tula. I've known him since his first days as a young designer, straight from fashion school. I did one of his first fashion shows at Fashion Week years ago, and every single show after that, well, almost every single show. And I love his style. He knows how to capture a woman's essence. You know, you always feel elegant and sophisticated in his clothes. And recently he asked me to be the face of his autumn-winter campaign. I said to him, this is another career milestone I'll be speaking about for years and years, something I'm very, very proud of.
Now, you've conquered a lot of milestones. You've won lots of contracts, like you said, face of Elizabeth Arden, now Tula Cindy. What is there possibly left to do for that?
Plenty more. I'm very sure there's plenty more.
What's on your wish list?
Ooh, well... you know what?
Don't kiss the tail.
In terms of modeling, my passion, it's just like a stage is for a musician, the ramp is for me. So I do as many fashion shows as I can when I have the time.
I didn't hear anything about possibly acting in this.
Oh my gosh.
What was your stint? Was it Generation?
Yes,
No. You can't hide anything from us. How was that? And are you going to pursue anything like that?
You know what? The acting bug did bite me.
Ising hore we discussed you anything. Harna di pir. We share everything.
And once I got on set and met the lovely cast and the crew, I was bitten by the bug. There's a few acting projects.
Lovely.
Yeah,
in
coming
the
along.
pipeline.
Yes, they're coming through.
Oh.
Yeah, a bit of comedy.
Ladies, it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us, and I love to see that you are real human beings like the rest of us, and that we may look at you and think this is absolute perfection, but your stories of triumph against a great deal of adversity definitely have encouraged us, and I hope you are just as encouraged as I am this evening and have taken away a lot from this conversation. Lerato Moloi and also Tsholo Maleva, thank you so much for joining us. That's all for this evening, folks. Let's do it again next week. Bye-bye.
Life happens for you and not just to you. Every single experience, every single moment that you go through, every single challenge is built specifically for you. No one else on this planet is meant to go through what you go through. If you have a dream, if you have a story you want to tell, if you have a vision, stick to it and remind yourself that it is possible. It is possible for it to happen. Anything is possible.